Welcome to today's episode of We're More Than D&D Characters. As we like to say on the show, we like to use this space to talk about how TTRPGs have a deeper impact on the people who experience them. They help us understand ourselves and understand the world, and therefore, we are more than D&D characters. Today, we have Mason Syddall with us, and we are very excited. Not only do, as you hopefully know at this point, I love in-person interviews. They're amazing, but also it's just fun to have people from our cast.
Yeah.
Very, very exciting. And I also love your topic. It was one that I had honestly near the top of my list in my head for hoping that like somebody would want to talk about this.
I mean, it's a hard to avoid part of D&D.
Yes.
It's very integral in it. So
yes, exactly. So actually you introduced the thing. Oh, okay, hold on. Don't let me get ahead of myself. Let's actually talk about you for a second. So You have been a part of Knocked Prone for a long time.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, actually.
It's been 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, I mean 4 years across 3 different campaigns, and you've been a part of all 3, right?
Yeah.
I messed that up with Alec,
the prequel. There was like one season that you guys had done before I joined.
Yes.
And then there was like a secondary prequel season that we did, and then we got into the whole Vecna like trilogy.
Yes. Yes, it is crazy. Like we have a whole bunch of content pre the trilogy series as well, which is on our Patreon. Like it's still around. But you were even a part of that before the original trilogy. So like seriously, OG, you know?
It's been fun. I appreciate you guys letting me join.
And knowing that you were a part of those prequel campaigns, I bet it's almost been 5 years that you've been involved.
Yeah, probably because I was still working at the first job I had at high school.
Yeah.
I think I only had that. I think I had that for 5 years. So
yeah, we were so young.
Yeah,
that's like you saying that makes me realize, like, oh my gosh, we were so young.
Yeah, I mean, I was there for a while, but still, that's a long time ago. Good times.
Yes. So being a part of the whole trilogy series, I kind of want to know, like, just do you have a favorite character that you've played throughout the 3?
I really enjoy a lot of the characters that I've played for different reasons, and so it makes it difficult to rank them. I think overall I would have to say Grom, just because his entire attitude is fun-loving, just being a party and boisterous and fighting and just all sorts of just kind of rowdy behavior, and so he was really just fun to play. Lakir was fun just in the sense of I got to be a brat all the time, and that was kind of fun to just throw snarky comments around and kind of be rude. I like behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys always remember, but I was constantly apologizing
so much.
I'm so sorry. Like, is this okay with everyone? But it was genuinely fun to just be kind of a jerk.
Yes. I love it because Lakir was so enabling to my character. But then in campaign 2, I almost feel like Salim had this like almost sense of responsibility over Grom, and almost vice versa as well.
It was like older sister energy.
Yes, but like very different between those two. And I love that. The contrast between campaign 1 and campaign 2 for that was amazing.
Yeah, so it was, they were both really fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Is there anything else you want as far as just introducing yourself and what you do, who you are, whether that's in or outside of the TTRPG world?
I think I'll just give like a little bit of context, especially considering my topic and how much I relate to like the responsibility of DMs and stuff like that. I do have a long history of DMing. It's actually what I've spent more of my time and D&D experience doing, kind of. The podcast has given me, honestly, one of the only avenues of playing a character that I've had for a while. But otherwise I have a lot of DM experience, and so I think I've been doing it for 8 to 9 years now. It's been a while. So I've just got decent bit of D&D experience. Other than that, I don't think I'm anything special. If that makes sense. Like I don't have any like super crazy qualifications or anything that like is relevant. So
no, but the DMing is awesome though. You do a fantastic job at DMing, and I think it's really fun to have someone who, I mean, you do have a little bit of like forever DM-ness in you. I feel like oftentimes when you are playing a game, it's because you're offering to run the game, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so I think it's just fun though that you've been able to also just play on the podcast as well. You know,
I think I give Kate a little bit of a headache because my brain, like my DM brain, I feel like I have a peek behind the screen, if that makes sense. And I kind of understand the thought processes he's going through and stuff like that. And so I appreciate Kate for being patient with me.
You know what? I love the different
amok.
archetypes of players though. And having somebody who DMs a lot at the table, I think adds a lot of stuff to a table, you know, and I totally think that you added that to the podcast and just in general, like games that I played with you. And yeah, there's just lots of different kind of, archetypes is how I'd probably describe that. So I can appreciate it.
Yeah. I love D&D. It's just a great game. I have a huge enjoyment for it. So kind of why we're here. I wanted to just talk about why I think it's such a great game and everything.
So now introduce your theme and kind of how would you describe in a sentence or two kind of what your topic is today?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to put it is essentially communication in D&D and how it encourages other positive qualities such as, empathy, teamwork, like sympathy and just other traits that allow you to connect to other people a little more effectively.
Yeah, for sure. Both in game and out of game, just very, very relevant for both.
And I would say too, like, in parentheses, like also just like almost subconsciously teaches you those things. Like, it's a natural part of playing the game. And so, you just end up kind of building those skills almost accidentally. It's nice. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. It just provides that for you. It's like built into the game, you know? Okay, very good. So let's talk a little bit about your TTRPG background and kind of where you're at right now with games. And then we'll dive into that topic and kind of go through our questions for that. So how were you introduced to TTRPGs? What did you say, like 8 or 9 years ago?
Yeah. I had a buddy that I was in, high school with Chris. I'll say the last name. I don't know if we should keep it in the podcast, but Chris, if you knew who he was, he invited me to play a game. I at the time played it was just a very liberal homebrew character that would probably relate to like Mystic nowadays, which is still like unofficial and like get your DM's permission to do it. So, and this was back when like it was 3.5 D&D. So it was a little more flexible on what you could do with your character. Like they had feats used to allow you to like take exotic weapons and different stuff like that. He eventually moved away to go to college, and the D&D group still wanted to play. And for some reason I just got selected to be the DM. And so I started making a world and a group. And
so when was that you, like your first time DMing? Like how long had you been playing at that point?
I'd probably only played like 2 or 3 sessions. So not very much.
I don't think that's particularly rare, especially when you start playing when you're younger. Chances are whoever is DMing like has not been playing for years and years and like has all this experience. But I seriously applaud people who start to DM. You know what I mean? Like when it's been like I've only played a couple sessions, like you're learning a lot. Like, you typically they're pretty eager to do what they need to do to be able to DM and everything. But that's just like a huge leap.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on. At the same time, I appreciate the patience of my party because I definitely had some railroad moments where as a new DM, I didn't know exactly what to do and things weren't going to plan and I needed to get to the next part of my campaign. So I definitely had like my learning moments and moments where I had to grow, but I enjoyed it. I wouldn't take it back. It was good. So
at this point, do you feel like you have a preference between DMing or being a player?
It's hard to say. I just, for those in the audience too, she asked me some questions ahead of time, so I might glance down to my phone just to remind myself of any answers that I had previously given. But yeah, no, I think it's hard to say. Playing as a player, you have less to worry about, and so you get to focus more on just kind of the enjoyment of everything. As a DM, though, it's like kind of planting a seed and watching it grow and like having the enjoyment of the long-term payoff, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Where it's like, you sprinkle little parts of different story elements throughout different parts of the story. And then like there's the session where the characters start putting things together and they're like, oh wait, but this. And it's like in that moment as a DM, there's just so much like dopamine that just rushes in because you're just like, yes, you're figuring it out. Like, yes. Like, and so, I don't know. They're both very enjoyable. I honestly think I would say being a DM, just because I enjoy world building and like lore creation so much.
Yeah. Well, like you said, that big payoff, like higher effort gives, I think, the opportunity for that like bigger reward.
Yes.
Not to say that being a player isn't fun, but you can you can put in a lot of effort as a player.
You only
for
have
sure.
so much control as a player.
Yes.
Which like, I'm not trying to sound like a control freak, but like, at the same time, like as a DM, like you're responsible for so much more, and going from DM to player, like, and being limited on that, on like the scope of what you can do. It can. It's not bad, but it's just different.
Yes, for sure. Well, I'm glad that you enjoy DMing, because I just feel like if the TTRPG world lacks one or the other, it's always going to be DMs, and not players.
Yeah.
So
on the bright side, if you're a DM out there, you always have a group. You literally just have to search.
Yes.
And
players struggle to find games, but DMs, I don't think it's that hard to attract players.
No, and you don't even have to be that good. I speak from experience.
No, that's the thing. Yeah, like any player would be just grateful to be a part of a game, even if you're not like super pro at it. So,
give it a shot.
So how about right now? What does your TTRPG world look like at the moment?
So I'm currently running 2 campaigns. One of them is a solo campaign for a very old friend. And then another one is a duo campaign for a couple of newer friends I had met. And they take place in the same world and at the same time. So the effects that they are doing and like the actions that they're taking in the world have effects on each other. They've like, for example, I hope they're not going to watch this and spoil things for themselves, but it doesn't matter.
Just skip this part.
There's like one of the teams is trying to basically free a city of some oppressive force, right? And by doing so, it's causing a lot of chaos because the oppressive force may be oppressive, but it's also what's keeping order in the area. And so without that, things are kind of spiraling out of control. The other character is like a ranger who's on his own in the woods, but has suddenly had an influx of refugees coming his way and doesn't fully understand why. And so it's been fun to have the 2 players.
So do they know that's happening?
No,
they don't.
I just use it to generate content for the other session.
Okay, that's
they're pretty close by on the map. So
oh my gosh, that's wild. And then, I mean, it seems like those 2 groups of people, they don't know each other personally at all.
No. I've mentioned them to each other, and told them that there's another campaign going on in the world, and that if they decide, like both groups decide, they can meet up and like if they wanted to have a group session, that would be an
at
option.
least once to get together and possibly do something together.
Yeah, but that's about all they know of each other. They haven't played together otherwise or anything.
So cool.
But it's been a fun experience, and like I said, it kind of creates some of the content for me because it's like I just have to think about, how do these actions ripple out and affect the world, and then
so. That still sounds very satisfying though as a DM. Even like you're not coming up with all of it on your own, but just to have those 2 worlds. I think there's something to me. I've never DM'd before, really, besides maybe like a single session. But I think there's something cool about when the world is going enough that the content does start to kind of create itself a little bit, right? Yeah. And they get into a flow where you're like, like you guys are kind of like creating aspects of what's going on, you know?
And like, even though they don't necessarily realize it, it's kind of cool to know that the players are having some sort of impact on each other and on the world. And if they do meet up, I think it would be funny if they kind of shared their notes and like started to realize like, wait, you were the one that caused this issue for me or something like that. So
so cool. Oh, I'm glad you're doing that. I didn't know about that. So it's super, super fun.
Yeah. And then other than that, I've been planning a Star Wars D&D campaign for the podcast. I've had to drag my feet and put it off due to schooling, but I'm getting back to it. So, I'll be excited to kind of do that, try my hand at something new. The entire system is different. And so it's just going to be interesting, I think.
Yeah. I hope that's fun to do something a little different from what you've done in the past.
I think it'll give me some experience and ideas and how I can apply them to my future games. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So now to dive into our topic, the first question I wanted to ask was, what aspects of TTRPGs do you feel like naturally encourage communication?
Yes, that with D&D, like I had mentioned earlier, the nature of the situations it puts you in, whether it be role play or combat, kind of forces teamwork. If you're playing a solo campaign, obviously that's not going to be the case. But in the typical group of 4, you have to work together. You're going to have to figure out who's best at which skills, and take a step back and let them show off their expertise and do different things like that. But similarly to that in combat, like everyone has their different strengths and weaknesses and different things like that. And I think it helps facilitate communication between everyone, because no one person can do it all, right? Like you have to lean on your team, you have to work together. And if you don't, a lot of the time things go south, when never split the party is a common saying in D&D, and that's exactly it. Like you're strongest as a team, as a unit. And once you start separating and not communicating, like that's when things go south. So
yeah. Well, I agree with what you say. Like just the natural mechanics of the game encourages communication for sure. And then a part of my brain did go, well, but what if you don't though? Like what if you're not great about communicating? But like you said, it simply won't work as well.
Yeah.
In the game, you will have more failures and things will be messier, but also kind of meta game, like you're more likely to be kind of frustrated with each other and, just to feel like things are getting messy. Your DM might be a little bit like, oh my gosh, guys, like I balanced this encounter. Like, what are you doing? So I think that because there's that flip side too, it really does just naturally encourage those things to happen.
It's an obstacle. It's a challenge for the players, right? And they want to overcome that challenge. So it gives them incentive to work together because that is what works in the game.
Yes.
And so by having that natural incentive, like I said, it's almost subconscious. You're not doing the things you're doing to facilitate communication and to effectively like build those skills. You're doing it because you want to beat the evil guy that's been tormenting your party for the last few months,
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just a helpful tool that way.
Yeah. So can you think of an in-game moment where communication changed the way that things played out in a situation?
Yeah. And I think you were here, like you were a viewer for part of the session. It was one of my home campaigns. I don't know how deep were you wanting me to go into the details on it? Because I could...
for as long as it relates to communication, like I want to know why that, had depth or like weight to it.
Yeah. So the party had visited a new town and they had some new party members that were kind of accompanying them. Essentially communication wasn't the most effective. Everyone had just kind of, I don't want to say, no one really had bad ideas. Like everyone, everyone had valid ideas and valid ways of solving the problem, but no one went for it. Like everyone went for their own ways kind of, instead of the group working together to go in a single direction. And so the party got split. There was just some confusion and issues and stuff like that. And it devolved into chaos. It was very fun. Like I had a great time. I think the players did too. I hope so. But it was just chaos. Like all the players were freaking out. 2 of the players were trying to infiltrate like a high priority castle. And then 2 other players were at like a fancy dinner and were having to try to keep their cool as they realized things were going wrong. And then they had to try to ditch the party in order to go and help their friends, while the people they were robbing were at the party and like paying close attention to them. And so Anyway, they ended up getting captured by the people that they had invaded. They were vampires and fairly powerful. They were separated and like interrogated, and they decided to stage a prison escape. And once again, everyone just had different ideas on what was going on. Someone was looking to escape. Other people were content to stay inside their cells. Kate's character had made a deal with the vampires, and so he was kind of nonchalant about escaping, didn't really care. And then there was a paladin who was like, like, screw these vampires. Like, we gotta escape. We gotta kill them. This is bad. And so, all in all, ended up leading to them accidentally bringing in some dark gods and demons into the world because they just, the vampires were capturing them because they were so powerful that their blood could be used to summon the dark things that they were wanting. And so they had some, once they were caught and a couple of them had already decided to help them out, it was just a matter of time. So, and so it was really fun. Like, I don't think that you have to have effective communication to enjoy the game. But without that effective communication, things just went crazy. I don't think any of the characters envisioned that from the start of when they began that arc. Like, I don't think anyone was like, this is where my character is going to end up. This is what I want to do. It was just kind of a chaotic scene. But at the same time, there were some strong character moments that happened from it. And we were able to move on and kind of reband the party. So it wasn't anything, detrimental, but
it sounds like, people had some good ideas. It would have maybe been a little more effective to pick an idea and then to work together to try out that idea. Right. And typically that's just how it goes in D&D. But also I can respect just that you have the perspective of, it's not always going to happen. It can still be fun, even if it's a little bit messy. It's not always going to work out that way. And D&D isn't always about playing optimally, know? So like, all in all, like, it's okay, but it does make you think. And I bet a lot of the players too, like, hindsight's 2020, they look back and think like, we did all kind of scatter, and do our own thing and didn't really help each other, which in a really like tough situation is probably not going to get you very far. Especially in a prison situation. They were already had like hands tied behind their backs and but it was a good one. It was still fun, and I think it overall helped the party band together. It was just a kind of a learning experience and a growth moment for everyone. So. So now I'm wondering do you have other ideas of what communication being challenged can look like at the table? Because I feel like you brought up at this point the example of people having different ideas and not working together on something. Like, what else can kind of come up as like just a challenge?
I think I'm trying to find the exact word for it because I don't want to be rude, but just self-interest, I guess I would say. I don't in thing. Everyone is at the table for a different reason, right? Some people really enjoy combat. Some people really enjoy role play. Some people just enjoy hanging out with their friends and playing a game, And so I think that one of those challenges can come in when the players or the DM don't have the same interests in mind, if that makes sense. If one player is wanting extreme combat and another player is wanting extreme role play, it's going to be difficult to make sure that each player is actively engaged at all times. And so I think part of it is finding a group that you can effectively communicate with and that your interests are aligned, that stuff like that. Because just like you can't be friends with everybody on the planet, like you can't be in a D&D group with everybody on the planet. You're going to have to find the people who work for you and who facilitate a game that brings you the most amount of enjoyment. So I think that's honestly one of the bigger challenges before communication can even get there, is having someone that you can actually connect with and have that communication with.
I'm interested in that response because I got that first part of being like, okay, well, people are going to want different things. They're going to care about different things. And so that makes me think of like a, step up, step down. Like you said, like people sometimes have a little bit too much of like their own self-interest in mind, or if they do have too much, then that can cause problems and everything. So there always is going to be a little bit of that sharing. But I think that you also point out something interesting to say, well, preventatively, if you realize that someone really, really, really likes combat and someone really, really, really doesn't like combat and really is just there for the role play, it genuinely might just be better to be at different tables.
Or
separate sessions.
like
to actually, it just depends, I think, too, on how much you're willing to compromise what you're looking for. Because some people are fine to be like, I'm fine to have a little bit of everything. I'm just going to enjoy this part more than this part.
Yeah.
But if it really is going to be that frustrating to you, then like you should maybe consider like finding your people that like fit more with what you're looking for. So there's like, you got options there, on how to kind of make that communication better.
The comfortability that you have with certain people to facilitate that communication.
Yes.
Communication can be a vulnerable thing. Like it's not the easiest thing to just say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I want. Like, because it opens you up to rejection. It opens you up to lots of other things that are scary or don't feel good. And so finding a group that you feel comfortable with and can actually delve into those vulnerabilities of communication and emotion and different stuff like that, I think are going to be a good part of just increasing the enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because I definitely think that any person would feel more or less comfortable communicating with certain groups for sure. But I feel like the whole lesson of this entire episode is going to be like, communication is good, and the more communication, the better. And you need to have quality communication. And here's all the good things that can come from it. But it's also like, for some people, very much easier said than done. Like some people will still have a really hard time actually putting that into practice and doing it.
Well, and it can be hard in the moment to identify what you need and what you want. Like, and then because if you can't identify it, how can you put it into words and effectively communicate it, Yeah. So it is not like just a walk in the park. Like I'm not trying to paint it that way. But yeah, just the more of those obstacles you're able to overcome, the easier it will be to allow that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I wonder, I don't know. I'm curious how much we'll kind of brainstorm things throughout this episode. Just, ways to facilitate communication and just different challenges and stuff. Because, I think that everyone can pretty much agree on the premise that like communication is good and important, but that like it gets messier than that too.
Yeah, it's not as easily said as done. Sorry, it's not as easily done as said. Mix that up.
I got what you were saying.
No, that's not as easily said as.
Okay, so my next question is, what does it take for players to actually learn from or over? Actually, so this is leading right from what I was saying. What does it take for players to actually learn from or overcome those challenges in communication? So if they're struggling with that, then, what's next?
I think this is where, there's personal responsibility of each player, right? They have to come in and be willing to put in the energy and effort to have that experience and to build those skills, right? They may not be consciously building those skills, but if you have a player that's checked out, like you're never going to progress in those skill sets at all. They obviously are not interested. And so this is where I feel like it falls to the DM and their responsibility to the group in making a good game is rewarding the players for putting forth that effort and for their vulnerability. If a player does something that like increases the enjoyment of the game, reward them for it. The game has like basic inspiration that you can provide, and that's like kind of a reward. Like Cade uses it all the time in our sessions when he feels that we've had a good character moment or we've advanced the plot or something like that, or sometimes when we've just said something funny. It's a great tool for the DM to use to just encourage players to like, I like that. Keep that up. That's the direction we want the game to go. But also in terms of role play and combat and different things like that, having times where combats are about certain players, or where it's important, or role play sessions where NPCs or character backstories are explored, like having those and rewarding the players for putting in their effort, because I'm someone who believes that it's impossible for people to create a D&D character that doesn't have some part of themselves in it. I think that like you can make it pretty obscure, or you can exaggerate or do whatever, but I think everyone sees a little bit of themselves in their D&D characters. And so if you are not rewarding that and encouraging that, then you're shutting down a part of the vulnerability that the player is already sharing. And so it's kind of on the DM to make sure you're enticing your players to continue coming together as a group and strengthening. And so, granted, you don't have to do it. Like, I'm not saying go into each session and be just like, if they're not best friends by the end of this, like I've failed, but that should be the goal, is to encourage positive behavior for whatever you want your game to look like.
Yeah. It's so interesting, the influence that a DM can have over their table and just the culture of their table.
Yeah.
And so I do love the idea of just considering what you can do to help facilitate better communication. And part of that is rewarding the good communication, starting it in the first place, asking good questions, all of that. The DM is in a very special position to do a lot of those things. But I also like how at the very beginning of your response, you also mentioned that there is an individual player responsibility for that as well.
Yeah.
So, the DM already has their own communication as an equal at the table, but then they have a couple of special abilities to help facilitate that at the table. But then also just on an individual level, like you've got to have that sense of responsibility for yourself. Like you said, if you've got a player that just, refuses to have any communication and doesn't seem what I want to say, like teachable, or like they're going to keep, trying and getting better.
They have no interest.
Then they're stuck, right? Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about that. But I think every player needs to have a little bit of that mindset of, I'm in charge of myself. I can control myself. I can have good communication. I can't control everyone else's response. And so communicating might get me somewhere if they're responsive and we're collaborating together, or it might not really get me anywhere. And that's not necessarily like all on me at that point. And also just realistically, there's going to be a messy mix of good response, bad response.
Yeah, you're never going to have a perfect.
No, even if everyone's super nice and they're trying their best, it's still like sometimes just going to be maybe not exactly what you were hoping for. But yeah, I think that's interesting to think about individual responsibility, the special things that a DM can do. And how that can kind of show up at the table, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty intricate.
Yeah, for sure. So my next question is, how does the nature of TTRPGs build empathy between players?
Yeah. Wow. That just feeds in pretty well. I think like I said, people put part of themselves into their characters. And so by having accepting their characters and celebrating their characters and doing things like that, it's going to that is a great thing to do. But you should be encouraging the players to do that to each other, right? Yeah. When players do that to each other's players or to NPCs or the DM or whatever, they start to build those skills, right? They're meeting someone that they've never met, like literally it's a fantasy setting, and they are being presented with quirks and, oddities and stuff like that, because no one wants a boring character who's perfect, and so by naturally moving forward and accepting them as part of the team and as part of the unit, it's we're accepting whatever part of yourself you've put into your character. Yeah. And it allows people to kind of open up and learn to, number one, accept others, and accept, whatever strange things that they may have, strange qualities they may have, learning to accept them and focus on the good and kind of, the strengths of this person and how they can help the team and vice versa, their weaknesses and how you can help them. I think that's a big part of the team building exercise of D&D is, like understanding like my character is good at this, but isn't so good at this. Like we'll need someone else to do that. And it kind of allows you to identify different strengths, different things like that, and other people's stuff. Going further deeper into backstories and stuff like that. Like it, I think there's a certain level of empathy that comes from understanding why a character does what they do because of the things that have happened to them in the past. That's at the end of the day, that's all we are as people, is our past experiences and wisdom that we've come across, and using that applied to the current situation, and then adding that to the heap and trying to learn and continue on, And so, I think that it's a very good reflection of that, and a good way of building. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't go too far off the rails with that one.
It's great. It's great. But I love it because there are so many different aspects of that for sure. And what I love about TTRPGs, like you said, in a fantasy setting, there's an aspect of like, why not, be able to accept this person for their quirks and oddities. Like the risk is very low when you're playing make believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're practicing something that maybe in real life would actually be more challenging. You learn that like the person you're about to adventure with is an actual known thief. And you're like, okay, in the game, obviously that would be different in real life. But I just think it's interesting what aspects of being empathetic and accepting parts of people, are a little easier within the game, but then also we know that those things can be challenged as well. Like
yes.
it can also be hard to be empathetic and to show up in a way that's really thoughtful towards people. But I love your perspective that everybody puts a little bit of themselves and their characters in one form or another, because you might think like, well, I am being empathetic or having a lack of empathy for this completely made up character, when kind of not really. Like, yes, they're made up, but also you are talking to a real person as well. And they are taking what you do personal to some degree.
Yeah. Especially in like high role play scenarios.
Yes. And in more vulnerable scenarios, like obviously it can look like a lot of different stuff, and I think this got brought up in Danny's episode too, but you just never know when something means a lot to someone.
Yeah.
You never know when that aspect of their character has a personal connection to them, and maybe it's something you didn't guess, or they make a role play decision that feels really important to them, even if it's a combat situation. Like you might not know like how much that is like
when
personal.
Celine killed Grom's friends, remember that was actually something that I had to talk to you outside of the D&D thing, and it wasn't like a heated discussion, but I was like, I don't think Grom liked that. Like I think he's pretty upset about what happened, and I think there's another question in here where we talk about, I kind of mentioned in my answer, a sensitive moment that happened between Cade and I in one of the early seasons. And there's a lot of those things where it's just like, you don't quite realize how important something is to someone until it becomes a thing,
Yes.
And so
I actually think, because like you said, you're like, I know this is part of my future answer. I think part of this actually does wrap into the next question, which was just, I wanted you to share about a time when playing a character gave you new insight into another person's struggles or emotions or worldview.
And that's actually going back to Grom, one of my favorite characters to play, but also one of the characters that I feel like is most unlike myself, and in some ways. I don't think that a lot of people that know me would say I'm like a loud, rowdy person who, likes to fight and drink and do all those crazy things that Grom does. But the inspiration for it came from my dad. He would tell me stories growing up. He was a farm, like a sheep herder, and and then eventually would tame horses and do like bricklaying and stuff like that. And so I took a bit of inspiration from that and decided to kind of build a character that had similarities and stuff like that. My dad and I didn't always see eye to eye. I don't want to say that we had like a bad relationship, but there it had its rough times. And I think that helped me kind of connect with him in a little bit. I got to play just something that I wasn't familiar with completely. And I had a great time. I understood why my dad looked back on like those memories with such fondness and stuff like that, because like, yeah, while it feels a little over the top to me personally to behave that way and stuff, like it's fun and it creates a lot of memories and like it allows the energy to just be enjoyed and capitalized on them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I and it actually helped me connect to my dad, which I apologize, I'm getting a little emotional, but he actually passed away shortly before the end of season 2. And so I really appreciated having that time to connect and get closer to him before that happened. So
yeah.
I think that D&D is a great option to do that and to explore just unfamiliar things that you're not used to and to get that sense of empathy. So.
Yeah. The fact that you'd built Grom, with a bit of that in mind. And like you said, it wasn't so much because it exactly related to you, but because it was relating to your dad. And of course you didn't know at that time that like he wasn't going to be around by the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, that personal connection is huge. And then, like you said, I don't know if you'd gone in with the intention of trying to create more empathy there and kind of put yourself in his shoes, but it sounds exactly like that. Exactly like that.
Yeah. And so it was a good experience. And I'm glad I did it. I would do it again.
Yeah, for sure. And how interesting to just think about, I don't know, choices that you had made as that character, things that felt significant to you, anything from combat to role play to the way that you communicated with players, how people responded to you and treated your character, and some of the significance there.
Yeah,
so.
No, and it allows me to see kind of like a different perspective, you know, like exactly what you're saying. People treat the character differently based on how they act and different things like that. And those responses may not be something that you're used to receiving, and it may make you feel, it allows you to have that perspective. So it was,
yeah. Did you feel like you were able to like communicate as needed with that? Does that make sense? I mean, I guess our character's moment is a good example of that, where like I had done something that I did not realize how heavy that was going to be for you, and was just kind of like a weird whirlwind kind of a moment that I also didn't picture my character getting into, you know?
It was the heat of the moment for sure.
Yes. I mean, like there was like we could do a whole episode breakdown, I think, on that, honestly. Yeah. So I think that's an example of a time where like you did choose to like very directly communicate about that. Like, I don't know, do you feel like throughout the entire season you were pretty comfortable with doing that? You were able to do that if there was something? Yeah.
I honestly remember, so I've been running and listening to the second campaign just because it keeps me company. It makes me laugh, and it's helpful to distract myself from the pain of running. And there's actually quite a few moments where like I like War. If you remember, like
War the
Ron
turtle, not
was
that.
always pissed at War and was like, why are we being nice to him? Why are we like, he deserves to be dead. Like this, like he has genocided a people, and like, we're just
chatting with them.
Yeah, we're just keeping him around. Like, and I remember like basically each character in turn had to take their time to explain like, this is why we're doing it. And this is, and even still my character and me was like, fine, but I don't like it. Like, and yeah, I think we had a very supportive environment that campaign. Like, our sessions, I feel like we do it in general, but like that campaign, especially, like I had Alec, who was constantly hyping me up and just being like, we were each other's wingman just constantly. And then, you know, we had you who like, I don't know, I always feel like you do the best to help support and enable other people to, you know, highlight their characters and show them off. And then we had Marissa, who did a great job of just like providing, I don't know, I feel like she was very supportive as well, because she is like just as a person.
Yes.
But she did a great job of having your character provide that almost like counter support and then coming around to it, like almost having to convince her why we needed to get her to support us or something like that.
Yes.
And I honestly think that did do a great job of facilitating that communication. It's like, no, this is why it's important to me and you should support me in this. And then, you know, that brings her character into things. So
man, no, it is fascinating to think of this particular topic with campaign 2, because it came up in so many ways. And overall, I think was a strength of the cast and storyline in campaign 2. And I think now thinking about it, especially because now, like, I've talked to Alec and he talked about campaign 2 and I'm talking to you and I'm thinking about my character and Marissa's character. All of us had really deep emotional ties with our characters. And like you said, every character has an aspect of yourself. I agree with that as well. But I feel like to a very personal extent for each of us, you know, we had ties to our characters. And so like, it's just interesting how that automatically gives like depth to that entire storyline, you know?
Yeah. And I don't want to like force my opinion on anyone else, but like personally, season 2 was one of my favorite seasons, and I've heard similar things from other people. And I think it's specifically because we were so personal with all of our characters, like we were invested and it showed. And so another just underlining of the importance of like, you know, communication and that vulnerability and how it can contribute to the enjoyment of a game.
The enjoyment and also just the things you can take from it outside of the game, like whether you're thinking of it like surface level as a game to have fun or as like something bigger. I think the more, you know, you can really put yourself in there for real, like, the better. Like it helps with both of those things. Also, I do think at this point, the consensus is that season 2, campaign 2 in the trilogy series has just been people's favorite.
It's strong. Like I don't blame anyone for liking it. Like season 3 is amazing. Season 1, like we were learning everything, and I feel like it's a great story. But season 2, I think it has that, like you said, that depth and that connection that we all had with each other.
Yeah. Super cool. It's fun to look back on for sure. Okay. So what about people who really have a weakness in communication and or empathy?
Yes.
And and how do you feel like that affects the game?
Well, number one, if you have weaknesses there, I think that D&D is kind of actually the perfect game for you. Like you don't go to the gym because you're ripped and strong. You go to the gym to get stronger. Like the same thing with D&D. Like you don't play D&D because you're already a master at communication and empathy and all of these other skills. You play it, number one, to have friends, like have friends and fun. But like number 2, to help build those skills, like to get better at playing it. And so I think D&D is is the perfect game for anyone who's struggling with those skills. I can't remember if it's this question. I had written down in here that empathy and communications are both skills. They're like, there's natural strengths that people can have, and those skills may be natural strengths that certain people have, but like there's still skills that can be developed and learned and trained, I think, in anybody. And so by exposing yourself to scenarios where those skills are kind of forced to be used, you allow yourself to start building and growing and strengthening yourself in those areas. And so as for how it impacts the game, I mean, I think everyone's kind of had the experience of like, you know, the first time DM, like, or the first time D&D player, and some of the kind of, you know, like the red flags or the classic tropes that people do,
struggling with the empathy and the communication.
Where and it happens a lot, and it's nothing necessarily to be ashamed of. Like it's part of joining D&D and learning to be a part of it. But you hear stories about people that kind of have the main character syndrome, where it's like everything's about them and their character, and they don't know how to take a step back. Or you have characters that, you know, you have players that don't step up and are too afraid to actually be vulnerable with anybody at the table. And whether you're dealing with either side of the extreme, like by exposing, like, for example, if someone thinks it's all about them, by exposing them to the group and stuff like that, and by having those I'm going to call it social consequences, but I'm not trying to mean that like the group is punishing them in any way. But, you know, like if they start being very selfish and then it obviously detracts from the enjoyment of the group, then if that person has any introspection whatsoever, they're going to start wondering why that might be happening and may start adjusting their behavior accordingly.
Yeah.
And as such, it's going to teach them that, you know, people, it's a thing for life as well. People don't like it when it's all about you, you know, it's give and take, and it's kind of a mix of the two. And vice versa. People don't like it when you don't give any of yourself, you know, whether you're being too much or not enough, like it can affect both the game and just your social interactions with people. And so D&D is just a great tool at kind of bringing it towards the middle, I think, if that makes sense. So.
Yep. And the hope is that there is some natural learning there, because there is simply like natural consequences with that. Like you said, you don't even have to specifically punish them for that. It's just that the table's enjoyment will go down and it'll change the way that people act. And like you said, if you have some self-awareness, you'll recognize that. And then I think that there are times at certain tables where that ends up having to be, again, like an out of game conversation, right?
Yes.
And so
also, there's nothing wrong with that. If whether you are giving that conversation or whether you are receiving that conversation, that doesn't say anything bad about you as a player or as a person. Like, literally take it as these people enjoy being around you or playing with you, and this lessens their enjoyment. They're trying to get over that so that they can. Like if they wanted you gone, they would just push you out, right? Yeah. They want you there, and they're trying to overcome this obstacle to have you there.
Yes.
And I think that's an important part to recognize and to go into any of those conversations with.
Yeah, for sure. It's a learning space. And I think that most D&D tables are very forgiving and will give lots and lots of chances before getting to that point of like wanting to just kick you out. That happens too. But
I don't think it's anyone's first resort.
No, nobody. I think it's very rare to just jump to that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. People are willing to help you learn. So, okay. Have you ever played a character who was completely different from you in terms of personality, background, or beliefs? And what was that experience like? Maybe this was similar.
A bit with Grom, but I think villains in my DM career. I think that number one, it can be very fun to create a compelling villain where because obviously I don't really have grand machinations to destroy the world, you know, it's not really my vibe. But I have to figure out why someone else wants that. And to make it a good story, I need to find compelling reasons about what has driven them to do these things. Just like I mentioned earlier, people are their past experiences being applied to current moments. And so, creating a villain is all about figuring out what sort of twisted events happening and twisted thinking can drive someone to do something like that. And even if you can't completely relate, I think there's been many times that people can connect to villains and be like, I understand. You don't endorse it. You don't think it's good, but you can understand why they're doing what they're doing. Right. And I think that that's a strong exercise in empathy as well. And and having to explore those kind of darker sides that you don't really want to look at and stuff like that. And I think it makes a good story when you have a compelling villain that the players can understand, and it's not just I'm killing everything for the sake of it, you know. The way you described it was perfect, where it's just an exercise in empathy. There's just not a lot of other spaces, especially for adults, where you have a reason to think about a villain and what happened to them and why, what their motive is to be able to do this, right? I mean, maybe as an author or something, other forms of storytelling, I think that exists. But other than that, I don't think there's a lot of opportunities to have a reason to really dive into that and think about it with some depth. And I think that's really, really cool. And so I think I see that a lot for DMs, but
I mean, even Danny had talked about in his episode, but it makes me think of Lakir as well. Any character that you have that might have a bit of evil in them, whether that's actually a part of their alignment or just a decision that they make, and you're thinking to yourself, like, I wouldn't do this.
Yes.
But if you've created enough of a character that you realize, and I don't mean this in a toxic way, but it's what my character would do, but legitimately you're like, this is going to be part of their arc. And again, like, I don't really relate to this decision, but I genuinely feel like this is, I can respect what this entity is and kind of where they would be coming from. Yeah. And like, how cool, to like put yourself in even your character's shoes in ways that you might not relate to them specifically.
Yeah. And that's actually a great point. I hadn't realized with like Lakir, like, cause his arc does end up pretty dark.
Pretty
like,
grim.
Yeah. It's a little, but like at the same time, I think it's exactly what I'm talking about, where if you listen to the entire campaign, you do kind of understand why he's doing what he's doing, and like may not fully agree with it, but it's there, Yeah. And so, it's a great exercise to kind of be able to do. And I apologize, I don't mean to drag the question on too long, but I think it like helps translate outside of D&D, where so many times throughout the world, like you see people doing things that you find questionable or, that you don't like. And yeah, it helps you stop and think, why are they doing this? And like, come to the understanding that they probably think they're being reasonable in some way or shape or form. And so, anyway, it's just
and like you said, that doesn't mean that you have to agree with it out of character or in character or like it. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you just have to like roll over and be like, well, I guess that's what their character would do, so I guess I'm just going to let them. Like you can still give pushback. I remember talking to people in campaign 1 as both of our characters were causing problems, like particularly out of game. We were like, you are welcome to say no, like stop this right now. Like we are going to tie you up if you're going to keep making these decisions.
We were dealing with Danny and Caden, who were both so nice and passive. And just to give them permission to say, you are welcome to fight back against this. Like I recognize we're being a little challenging. Even wanting it at some points because it's like,
please stop me.
Like I don't want to be this bad.
That was a unique situation. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, did we take that too far? I love the story, but I'm like, we really made that hard on Caden and Danny. Also
pretty dark for a children's show. Sorry about that, Kate.
Interesting thing to think about for sure. Okay, so this question might kind of go back to some of the things that you had just mentioned a little bit earlier, but I want to know if you've had sessions that have required vulnerable communication between players. Like we said, communication, great. Sometimes it's just a healthy part of each individual session, but I think there's some kinds of situations of communication that are way more difficult and vulnerable than others.
Yes. And both in their response and just coming to mind, like we've mentioned, people put themselves into their characters. And so when you put those characters in stress or pressure or something like that, that stress and pressure can start relating over to the actual person. And that's when it can get a little dicey, especially if it's a vulnerable subject. I specifically, like I had mentioned earlier in like today, Kate and I had a moment in the first season where, as I kind of mentioned, not always on the best of terms with my dad. And Litsy's dad in the campaign was not the best person in the world. And neither was Lakir's father. And so having those interactions with them where like Kate is staying true to their characters and being kind of brutal and cruel, definitely touched on some sensitive nerves for me, and vice versa. I remember Cade had mentioned, I won't go into the personal stuff because I don't know how much he wants me to share, but like he had mentioned that he had some sensitivity around like the way I was acting as well. And so together, I think it was, I don't think it was that far into the session. I want to say it was like, I can't remember. Was it 6 or 7? It was right after we go to the knoll.
Yeah, it wasn't far in.
Yeah. 11. Yeah.
Kate knows that.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense. It's his job to do all that. But yeah, by like, and it was like a legitimate moment of heated conversation. Like I remember after the session, both of us had to be like, we're good. Like we had to take a bit. We had to breathe. Like I remember personally sweating and like being heated and a little flustered. And so, yeah, those moments definitely happen. As a DM, I don't know if I've had to facilitate as many of those moments since they may not have been as personal to me, if that makes sense. But I've never had a character, like a person bring up like, hey, this happened in the session and I like really didn't like it. Like it highly upset me. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with it, but it definitely happens.
When I think about our most heated moments in Knocked Prone in the entire trilogy series, I can think of what the conversation looked like after in every instance that's coming to my brain. So it does make me think like, I'm glad that every time we did talk about it, because I think the less good thing to do would have been to like
just kind of
get heated and be like, I don't want to talk about it. And then to just not talk about it, especially because the session's going to resume. Those themes are going to return. That's a permanent part of the storyline. Whether we're talking about, Litsy's dad stuff and Lakir's dad stuff for sure. Bridesmaid of Darkness is a classic one that we could also do a whole episode breakdown on. And my character killing all of Grom's high school friends.
Which that wasn't as bad as like me personally. It was just kind of like, I don't think Grom would like that.
Yes, but I mean, all of those things resulted in conversations afterwards. That's not to say that it was perfect. I don't remember enough to really comment on that, but it could have been better.
To resolve things too, which I think is the important part. We had those conversations and they may not have been, like you said, they may not have been approached in the most delicate and perfect manner, but like we worked together and had good intentions to work through and get to the other side.
Yeah.
So
the fact that we talked about it at all is like, that's good to think about, because I haven't really considered that until we're just having this conversation about communication. I'm like, we did communicate in each of those times. And again, doesn't necessarily mean that it was perfect, but I'm glad that there was something there where I genuinely feel like at some tables there wouldn't have been. It would have been like I'm walking away and I don't want to deal with this.
Just kind of a sign, just like, okay, well, next week we're doing the same thing.
Either I feel like the two options at that point is either everyone just trying to forget about it and all nearly retcon, like just toss it away and avoid it, which is kind of a bummer to what the storyline could do at that point. Because
our fathers were so integral to our character stories.
Yes.
Like,
can you imagine if it got tense and Cade was like, I'm not touching this anymore, and it just gone in a different direction, it would have completely changed the storyline.
I don't know where it would have ended.
So fascinating to think about that. Anything else you wanted to add towards just vulnerable communication between players? Like, did you get on everything you wanted to?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, I know you had asked me like moments that of like vulnerability. Was there any follow up to that, or was that the complete question?
Well, I mean, I do kind of have a follow-up question with that, which is I want to know if you feel like particularly the vulnerable communication we're talking about, is that easier in a game setting? And when I say game setting, I mean in role play setting, but also even just meta talking about outside of the game. Do you think that is easier than real life communication, completely separate from TTRPGs? Or at least just how do they compare? Yeah,
I was going to say, I don't know if easier is the right word. I think it would depend on what you have more experience with. But I think the advantage that TTRPGs provide is that you have almost like a separate mental space to break the ice of whatever the argument is. And then after the heat has kind of been directed there, you're able to take a step back and then discuss it. If that makes sense, where it's like, sure, like words may have been said and things may have been done that were hurtful, but it was imaginary and it was
still a game.
Yeah, it was a game. It didn't matter. And so you're able to step back and then be like, okay, now things matter. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I like want. That's how that made me feel. Right. And it's easier to have that almost bit of separation because like you put part of yourself in the character, but like it's not completely you. And so you're able to have that bit of separation where it's like, this didn't happen straight to me. Like I'm not like, it's not something that I have to continually face. Like you said, it's only once you pick up the session again that those themes and that scenario starts returning. So I think once the threat of continuance is gone, then it allows people to kind of step back, separate, and be like, this is what I need to continue and do stuff like that. Like I said, just kind of a break in the ice so that people can get into deeper conversation about something.
Again, I wouldn't necessarily say easier. I don't even really love how I worded that question because, I mean, there's just too many scenarios to try to run through your head. But the other thought that I had is just that in TTRPGs, there is an assumption that that kind of communication can and should be on the table. So to me, I think that helps prime me to have those conversations because the hope is that you're having those conversations. And I think at least at the culture of most of the places that I've played D&D, I just think that I understand that that's just kind of part of the game. I'm sure that not everybody feels that way about their D&D sessions.
Everyone looks for different things. But
yeah, like not everybody, I think, has like that super open, honest communication style, even just for the game. But when I think about a lot of like real life scenarios, there's a lot of places where it's like, well, what is your work culture like? Like, are you in a work culture where you feel like you can bring up your concerns and talk, or even with your friends? Are you the kind of people that can be vulnerable and have communication that's about hard things? What about your empathy within the real world? Like, I just think that, I don't know, to me, that does sound a little bit harder versus a place where it is, you're kind of more, at least in my experience, welcome with open arms to have communication.
Yes.
And other places you might feel even a little punished, just depending, for being honest about how you're feeling or for asking for change from someone.
Especially
or whatever.
At, like, work and stuff, like you said, like it's hard to be vulnerable at work and it's hard to have that. Anyway. Tangent, but like just highlighting what you're saying, like it's nice to have a place where that's expected and encouraged rather than punished whenever possible.
Yes, but it's my hope that there's more spaces like that, beyond TTRPGs. Well, yes, bleeds out and generalizes as a skill, but also I wish that there was just more places within an adult's life where they just felt like communication can just be really honest and open and we can be adults and just have a conversation about this. But I think of work a lot because I think a lot of people are like, this is driving me crazy at work, or I'm really, really bothered by this, but they feel like either they can't say anything about it, or if they have, it just has not gone well for them in the past. Yeah. And that's just typically not the culture I think that TTRPGs tries to create.
Yeah. And it's good to have a different experience with communication and vulnerability, because if you only have that kind of hesitation and stuff from work or something like that, then it's going to be difficult to facilitate that communication in other places in your life.
So I'm wondering if you feel like in your time playing TTRPGs over the last 8 or 9 years, have you noticed a change in your own communication or empathy in ways that have gone just beyond the gameplay?
Yeah, I remember writing a response to this. So I just want to make sure. I used to do acting, like, so I wouldn't say that I was just like cold-hearted and like a brutal person before D&D, but I used to do acting. And one of my favorite things about acting was being able to step into a different character, to just be someone other than myself for a little bit, forget about my troubles, my stress and all that different stuff. And, for the next hour or two, I am this character who needs to worry about getting murdered or whatever is happening in the play, And so it was kind of a release. And so D&D was even more so of that, like being able to, number one, in acting, being able to explore a character and understand why they're doing what they're doing, and having like what motivations they have and what's important to them and stuff like that. That's another great exercise in like empathy and stuff like that. And so being able to carry that over to D&D and almost expand it by having it personally relate to me instead of just being a random character from the play that we decided to do that year. I think that went a long way in teaching me like just different things as well. Like I'm not trying to sound like too sob story, but like I didn't have like a huge amount of friends when I was going through school and stuff like that. And so I wasn't always completely sure how I was supposed to act or react to certain things, where it's just like I didn't have that social knowledge, if that makes sense. And so D&D almost provided a safe space to be able to learn those type of things and be able to I don't know, pick up on those cues that I hadn't gotten previously, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like it's been very impactful for me in being able to, in both like learning, but also in terms of expression, being able to express myself and different stuff like that through these different characters and being able to explore the things that I like and dislike about each character, because it's like, there are many things about Lakir, Grom, and Talroth that I love, like I think are great. There's also many things, I shouldn't say many things, but there's also parts of them that it's just like, oh, I would never want to personally be like that, like, and so it's just a good experience to be able to try certain things on and be, nah, I don't like that, or, oh, I do like that, like, and stuff like that, because I feel like that's part of growth as a person is, I don't mean to take it too far away from D&D, but like we meet different people, we see different aspects of them that we like. And I think we have a way of trying them on ourselves. And, and if we like them, we keep them. If not, we discard them. And I think that D&D just almost allows you to do that more frequently and more often to, be able to explore that more. So
I think this question's fascinating to me particularly because of where your experience with D&D also just lines up with your phase of life as well. We're talking like entering adulthood to now being in your late 20s, right? Like that's a huge developmental time in someone's life.
True.
Talking about, picking up on social cues, becoming more empathetic, understanding what parts of yourself you want to express and be a part of your life, and what things maybe you're like, nope, that's not me. That's not something I value. And I don't want to be that way, right? Like, the hope is everyone already has that in this phase of their life. So it's just interesting to think about how TTRPGs have kind of been a companion to that already existent like journey that everybody goes through with like throughout their 20s, and so I just think it's interesting like where that feels relevant to you, but also just how, like, of course that was like a part of the last decade of your life, I don't know.
It was... No, I agree with what you're saying. No, it makes sense. It's just a natural developmental part of my life. And so like, it's cool that I had the tools to be able to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Like to have those things, I think to some degree would have happened already, but to have TTRPGs kind of be happening in tandem with that is just really interesting to think about.
And I hadn't even considered that, like, that may be a reason why I'm so attached to D&D and stuff like that, is it's, from what I view, how I learned certain things. And so of course I value it. It's what taught me what I use to get through certain aspects of life now. So that's a good insight. Thank you.
Like it's been with you during really integral parts of your life. So I think it'll always feel, you'll always have an attachment to that. It'll always feel significant, to you because of just the experiences that you've had with it since.
And I hope so. I don't really want to leave D&D. I value it very highly right now. So
okay. So maybe this seems a little bit off topic, but I still like this question anyway, and I want to know your answer. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on using TTRPGs as a therapy tool, like an actual therapy tool, because talking about empathy and communication, it's just part of where my brain goes. And that's actually being done. Like there are therapists that are now utilizing TTRPGs as an actual tool. So thoughts on that?
I think, especially for children, it is wonderful because it allows them to, like I said, there's that separation, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you ask a child, like, hey, what's bothering you? Like, what's wrong? They may not be able to communicate and verbalize that, right? Mm-hmm. But if you ask them to create a character that they can put themselves into, and then you put that character through different scenarios and stuff like that, they're going to be able to show you different aspects of themselves that they probably wouldn't be voluntarily just like giving you otherwise, or they wouldn't know how to give you. And so I think it could be used as a very positive thing that way, or for things like exposure therapy, where, some people have visceral reactions to social situations or to physical encounters and stuff like that. And like, having an environment that's safe and that they can step away from when needed, that exposes them to those ideas and those situations, can allow them to, build up their strength and figure out, I don't even want to say build up their strength. That's a wrong thing, but just like to figure out how to get through it.
Yeah.
Because with anything that feels overwhelming, really getting through it is just learning how to manage your emotions and cope with it until they're no longer bombarding you. Right. And so I think that gives an excellent like practice in doing so. If you're exposed to that and you're just like, okay, breathe, like separate, figure, it allows you to find those different tools. And so, I remember when you had sent me this question, the only thing that like made me feel a little off is like, I'm just going to say for the viewers, like, don't turn a regular Thursday, Friday night into your therapy session.
Right.
That is a quick way of, I mean, maybe it will turn out great and you'll have like resolutions to all your problems because you have a super supportive group. Yeah. But at the same time, like I said earlier, like the whole main character syndrome, like it's not about you. It's not about you and your personal stuff. Like it's great to put it in there and to like do it. But like, yeah, if you turn it into your therapy session, then it's going to diminish the enjoyment from other players,
Yes.
And so, and two, it may put you in an uncomfortable spot. You may regret being so vulnerable. And then, like those are things that you may want to share with people that are a little more closer, like that you have a bit more trust with. And so not that I'm saying you shouldn't trust you know what I'm meaning though. It's a very vulnerable thing to explore. So, or if you're going to do that, at least bring it up with everyone and make sure that they're okay with helping you work through something specific and something like that. If stuff comes up naturally, I think that's unavoidable and, a part of playing the game. But yeah, if you're going into a session with like, I want to overcome this traumatic thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be in a specific scenario that's built for that. So, but no, I think it's a wonderful idea and a great tool to be used for lots of people, especially, like I said, for those who don't exactly know how to identify or communicate things as of yet.
Yes.
It gives them a safe space to just start learning how to identify those things. So.
Yeah, I think that's why I wanted to ask it, is because it's just such a unique possibility for communication. So if that is something that is just a barrier in different therapeutic settings, I think it's really interesting, the idea of using that. But also, like big separation from TTRPGs, like actual therapeutic TTRPG spaces, for somebody that's trained for that, and your regular home game. But even though in my mind, very big separation, sometimes I think the conversations we have on this show make it seem like there's a lot of crossover there, because it's like you're exploring yourself and you're overcoming this and you're putting yourself in your character and like all these different things, and it has a greater impact than just on the game. And it's like, yes, still not the same thing. Yeah. And also still be really careful with that.
Yes.
And don't bite off more than you can chew. Like, I think that of course there's something cool about exploring aspects of yourself in TTRPGs. I think everyone does, whether they kind of choose to or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's not do the most with that. Like, let's be careful.
Yeah. Like with anything, if moderation, you don't want to go full force. If you're going at 100, you're probably doing it wrong with really anything you're doing in life.
Like just like be a little wary of that. But a cool concept though.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, the idea of doing that is really cool. All right, I think I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And that's, if you wanted to design a campaign or scenario, even, it doesn't have, so full campaign or specific scenario specifically to foster empathy, what would that look like?
Yeah. And I may have to like give an update at some point, because so let me give my answer first.
Yes.
So I remember you sending me this question and I loved it. My answer is just the D&D Feywild universe, because it is completely temperamental to whatever beings are around it. When you go into the Feywild, like the very nature of plant life and the land and everything around you changes based on what energy you are putting into it. If you are happy and go lucky, the trees are going to dance and breeze, and are like the flowers are going to smile at you, and like a bunch of different things. But if you're sad and angry and grumpy, like rocks are going to purposely jump out of the ground to get in your way, and like, you know, you may just like reverse gravity and like suddenly be falling. Like it's a very temperamental universe, and so I think it would draw a lot of attention to the emotions that the players are feeling, and it would cause them to pay attention. You know, I wouldn't want to make the entire campaign be just like be as robotic as possible, but you know, just kind of more of the exploration of the consequences of emotions and how having an emotion can ripple out and cause unintended effects to the world around you. Like, obviously it's exaggerated, but, and so, actually both the sessions, the world that they share, one of the campaigns, one of the characters is heavily intertwined with the Fae. And so I plan on having part of their, like one of the arcs in their higher level sessions explore the Feywild. They're going to go there and do stuff like that. And so I plan on having that kind of thing, because they both can be a little hot-headed and stuff like that. And so I think it'll be very fun to put them in an environment that reacts to that hot-headedness and you know, kind of feeds off of it. So I think that would be a very fun environment to be in, especially if it was a role play heavy campaign that, like, I don't know, like whatever could be used to just try to entice emotions as much as possible, you know,
and make them feel very relevant, you know, like just like such a responsive world.
Which the Fae, they're like that. That's the thing is, I don't mean to turn this into a lore dump about Fae creatures. I'm so here. But, I love the Fae. But like, they're messed up. Like everything that they do is to elicit reaction from people. If they're visiting the Feywild, they like to cause them to feel misery and suffering, because then they know that that misery and suffering is going to feed into the world around them and cause them more like issues later on. They think that's funny, right? Like they're causing their own problems because this Fae got into their head, and they're like, they just think that's hilarious. And so like they'll do crazy, cruel and terrible things just to elicit a response from you. And so I think that the Fae is just kind of one of those perfect places to explore that.
Yes, it makes you have to be self-reflective, you know, in a scenario like that where you realize that, you know, you might be causing things. Also, this feels so relevant. Kate and I just watched The Labyrinth last night. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what he's thinking of. And now I did not think about this last night when we were watching it, but it is so Feywild coded.
Yes.
100%. Yeah. You know, like everything's so responsive to you. People are trying to trick you. And oftentimes, like the main character, like she's got to get level-headed, you know, in order to get to the next part, right? And
that's the whole challenge is keeping yourself level-headed when all this chaos and stuff is thrown at you. So that's that's a cool parallel to draw. I like it.
Yeah, well, just thinking of just character development in general, like Feywild is a good place to like kickstart some of that, you know? Like that's a great idea. So
and it's completely foreign. So like no players would be able to, at least unless they've had like a D&D experience in the past that, you know, they've extensively explored the Feywild. Like they're not going to know exactly what's being thrown at them. They can't prepare fully for it.
Yeah. So. Well, honestly, the way that an individual DM or storyteller creates the Feywild too, I mean, there's room for so much variety there in what it looks like and to figure things out. So even if you know a lot about it, I think that there's still a lot to figure out, you know? So that's really fun. Okay, very good. Well, anything that you feel like we've missed, things you want to just throw out there? I feel like we covered a lot of stuff, actually.
No, I feel like this has been a very good and productive conversation. So thank you.
Oh, man, I'm so happy with it. Like I said, this topic was one I was super looking forward to, and I think a lot of people will relate with. And it's just something that no matter your style of D&D or your experience level or, you know, how you utilize D&D, like, it's just a part of the game. Like communication, empathy, is integrated in everybody's D&D game. So thanks for talking with me about it. And
thank
you're
you
the
for bringing
perfect
me on.
person to talk to with it. And I also appreciate just all the concrete examples too of just ways that's come up. So yeah, it's really fun.
Happy to be here. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Do you have anything that you want to shout out, promote?
I'm trying to think, but not.
Well, I mean, the Star Wars campaign.
I mean,
if
yeah,
that happens,
sorry.
Because no. I mean, like, I'm just because that's not something people can find right now. If I remember, though, if it does come up, I'll leave a link to it specifically in the show notes and everything. So if you want an update on that, then go ahead and look at the description.
That's probably like, yeah. So that's like, I'm finishing up development from the DM side right now. There was some changes that happened just to the group size. And so I'm figuring out balancing stuff that way. But yes, I'll probably I don't know exactly how long it would take to record, edit, and get out, but I would say probably within the next couple months, we'll have that coming out. And then, and I'm really excited for it. I think I've been watching a bunch of the Andor season 2 came out. I've played some of the Star Wars games and stuff like that as for inspiration. So I'm really excited to be able to jump into a world that I love so dearly and be able to tell my own story within it. So yeah, check that out. If you like Star Wars, especially, I hope it'll be a good time. I'm going to try my best to stay true to the series and stuff like that. Obviously it won't be anything canon. I'm making up my own stuff just to avoid any messes that way. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. So yeah,
cool.
keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. And listen to any of the Noct Prone trilogy, and Mason will be in it. So if you want more of Mason, that's where you can find it. Yeah,
there's some really good episodes and seasons. So
For sure. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Remember, when life knocks you flat on your back, all you got to do is keep rolling, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.